Well, here we are at the fourth annual Blue Ridge Book Fest on the campus of Blue Ridge Community College, and we are so honored to have Michael Wallace with us today, author of, what is it, Michael, 18 books,
Yes,
heading for 19. I became an instant fan when I read in preparation for this interview his 18th book, David Crockett, The Lion of the West. And so as I conduct this interview, having read the book and written a review about it, I have to admit in all openness that I'm not the most impartial person that might be sitting here doing this interview. I love this book, and I want to ask you, Michael, how is it that with so many books written about David Crockett in the past, you picked David Crockett to write about once again?
it's a very good question. Basically, what happens for me, and I think it happens for a lot of authors of nonfiction and specifically history and biography, is that the subject and the author find each other. There's always, for me, a bit of serendipity there, and out in the great cosmos is this book idea and the author, and eventually we gently collide. Hopefully it's gentle. And that was the case here with Crockett. I don't write a book unless it comes from, the idea comes from within me. People are very good about suggesting books for you to write.
Oh, yes.
Usually about their grandfather or grandmother or themselves, and or subjects, and but it has to come from within me, and I have to have a passion for the subject, and I certainly had one for Crockett. I've written about other people and other entities that also have been covered very well, including Billy the Kid. There have been hundreds of books written about that young man, but there's always room for more. There's certainly, this was certainly the case with Crockett. There have been plenty of books about Crockett, but in all candor, very few really good ones at all. And I wanted to present the whole person, the whole man, and not just focus, as many people do, on his later adult years in the Alamo. Which everyone, of course, thinks about at some point when they think about Crockett. In that episode, which ended his life, of course, but only consumed the last few weeks of his life.
Correct, yes.
And it's greatly overdone. I wanted you to take part in his early life in Tennessee, and all over Tennessee, because he lived all over Tennessee, and give you a feel for that man and every aspect of it.
Well, here I grew up wearing a Crockett coonskin cap, wearing his shirt, believing all the mythology, and I have to imagine that doing the research for this book, and the research that you did was exhaustive, extensive, just a thing of beauty.
True.
There was so much that you had to sort through and throw away, because myth built on myth built on myth doesn't make an accurate story about David Crockett.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's always the case. Getting rid of the chaff and separating the truth from the myth, and at the same time preserving the myth, not wanting to destroy the myth, because myth is very important in our cultural life. But like you, I grew up with the Walt Disney version, as portrayed by that lanky former Marine Fess Parker, as David Crockett. And then, of course, he went on to portray Daniel Boone wearing the same getup, the fringe buckskin, the coonskin hat, which is ironic since Boone, who was from another generation completely, they never crossed paths, despised animal skin hats and very seldom wore them or buckskin. And Crockett, if truth be known, very seldom at all wore coonskin hats. They preferred the big cloth Pennsylvania hunter's hats. But because of Uncle Walt Disney and Fess Parker, we have what I call my 9-year-old boy version of the story. And I just thought it was time to give people the grown-up version, and that's what you have.
Well,
in this
not
book.
only did Crockett and Boone not overlap in time, but my sense is, having read Robert Morgan's book on Daniel Boone,
Yeah.
they were very different people.
Very different.
The thing that I was struck by in your writing of Crockett was that he was an honest man,
Yes.
always seeking to repay debts. Can you tell us more about the Crockett that you discovered?
Yeah, a very interesting person, obviously, or otherwise I wouldn't have written about him. But he of great interest and like everyone else I've written about, certainly very much a human being, not a superhero or the mythical character that could wade the Mississippi and lasso comets and all of the myth that was portrayed in those great almanacs, a series of almanacs about Crockett that came out all the way through the Civil War, or some of the other presentations of the man. I do need to tell you, and I don't want to sadden you, and you know this from reading the book, he did not kill him a bar when he was only 3. And he wasn't born on a mountaintop.
Right.
And he very seldom at all even referred to himself as Davy. He preferred David Crockett, his given name. He signed his name David Crockett. He did go to Congress and serve a spell, as that old ditty says, but he had 3 terms in Congress. However, he didn't go off in buckskins and moccasins. He wore a proper frock coat and silk cravat and trousers, and really made a name for himself there. Sometimes not a very good name, but people knew when Mr. Crockett was in Washington City.
Well, and he went there and fought some impossible to win fights with politicians like Andrew Jackson.
Like Andrew Jackson. The relationship, which is borne out in this book with Jackson, was very much a love-hate relationship. Jackson could be considered in part his political mentor. He served under Jackson in the ill-fated Creek War during the War of 1812, when Jackson allied with the Cherokee Nation against the Creek people. And it was out of that experience where Crockett witnessed so many atrocities and just the horrors of combat and war and its impact on these Indian villages, that it sickened him, and he wanted no more to do with that. And many years later, when he was in Congress, and Jackson was coming up with what became known as the Indian Removal Act, which he signed into law, which spelled the beginning and the end for 5 prominent tribes in this part of the country in the southeastern United States, including the Cherokees who had allied with him.
Correct.
Crockett stood up to him. The only member of the Tennessee delegation to stand up to him, to his party, actually to his constituents, and say, wait, enough is enough. We've done enough to these poor people. Leave them be. And, of course, that wasn't meant to be, according to Old Hickory, or more appropriately, as the Creeks and Cherokees called him, Old Sharp Knife. And that bill was enacted, and we had our trails, many trails of tears, watery and overland. And it cost Crockett his job in Congress. And he was beaten, as he loved to point out, by a one-legged man. And he famously said, you all can go to hell, and I'm going to Texas. Right. And that's where he went, and at 49 years of age, it all came to an end.
The impression that I had throughout was that he led a life oriented toward public service, that he led a life, and a lot of his personal ambition came from listening to the requests of his constituents and the general public.
Yes.
So it wasn't necessarily the life, he didn't spend all his time hunting. He loved to hunt.
Loved to hunt.
But he often found himself hunting a new political office. And
he did.
And I'm taken by that.
That's true. Well, of course, he wasn't a sport hunter. He hunted. That was his job.
That's right.
He wasn't a very successful farmer. He hunted for a living and hunted primarily the North American black bear. And slew many bear, and that's how he put groceries on the table and clothes on his brood's backs. But he did have some of the natural ingredients, especially for a politician of that time. Well, even of this time, too, some things don't change. For instance, he had the gift of gab, and he could tell stories and tales, and that's often what he did. And he was really one of the first political figures in this country not to come from the landed gentry. Even Jackson, who liked to portray himself as a populist and from the common man, even he was a very prominent landowner, owned a huge number of slaves, had a great deal of landholdings. But Crockett really came from the soil more than anyone else at that time, including the great statesmen from the eastern United States and Henry Clay and Daniel Webster and Calhoun and so forth. So he really represented the people and his constituents. He was not successful in getting passed a land bill that was his quest throughout his terms in Congress, to get land for the squatters and the downtrodden. But he fought for them in every way he could, and certainly never forgot his roots.
He often moved in the course of his life.
Yes, he did.
One of the things that caused him to move was the depletion of the bear population and other huntable meat.
Right.
And he'd move on to new hunting lands.
New hunting lands. You know, at one time, certainly in his grandfather, the old Scots-Irishman, his life through the mid to late 1700s, there were still plenty of bear. There were even elk and bison, over in this part of the country, out in some of the Appalachians and all the way over to Blue Ridge and the Smokies. Well, as with the European settlement and intrusion and the push that eventually became known as Manifest Destiny, the game was pushed farther and farther and began to be diminished. The great old growth forests that, as I point out, had never felt an axe blade began to fall. The land was opened up, and the native people of this land were displaced, along with the fauna and flora. And Crockett was a part of that. He was a frontiersman, and in the advance guard moving to the frontier. It's interesting to see what would have happened to Crockett if he hadn't made that ill-fated trip down to Texas, because he was gypsy-footed. He liked to be on the move, and perhaps he would have played around down there for a while, and then maybe he would have gone west. He knew Becknell, the father of the Santa Fe Trail, who started the Santa Fe Trail back in 1821. He visited Becknell and hunted bison with him on his way to the Alamo. Maybe Crockett would have gone out to the Southwest or all the way out to the California shore. We'll never know.
Yeah, I got the idea that he went to Texas reluctantly. It wasn't the only choice he had.
No.
But it came at a time when he was being pressured by folks down there to join them.
He was being pressured, and also because they said he could make some money. And it's back to what you said. He grew up with a father who was constantly in debt, found himself in debt all the time. Was a poor manager, and Crockett vowed that he'd never get in that position.
In fact, as a child, he was loaned out.
He was
to
indentured.
pay his father's debt.
Yeah, that was very common. That's why he had a big brood of kids to help around the farm, but also he indentured them out. I've found, and for the first time I've identified an older sister of Crockett who's never been identified before, who the father indentured out as a servant girl, and she was immediately impregnated by the landowner and threw her out, and then Crockett's father threw her out. It was horrible treatment of these kids.
Well, we're hearing quite a lot about David Crockett, and I have to tell you, I regard him as a hero after reading this book.
Yeah.
But for an entirely different reason than I regarded him 60 years ago when I was 10 years old.
Sure.
To be a hero.
Yeah.
So it's the hero is still alive. It's just been properly defined.
Properly
at this
defined.
point.
That's exactly right.
You, sir, are somebody we want to know more about. Michael Wallace, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes.
I think you get the award for having traveled the furthest to get here to this Blue Ridge Book Festival.
Well, I love
Appreciate
coming
that.
to this part of the country.
Appreciate your having come. With 18 books to your credit, I guess another one in the works. How
Always.
many more books are running around in your creative head?
Well, a good many. A good many. You know, people. I'm 66 years old. I've been making a living as a writer since the late 60s, as a journalist and then a writer of books. And people say to me, well, are you thinking about retiring? And of course, that word's not in many authors' vocabulary. I'll probably retire when I pitch over dead at the computer keyboard. But until that time, I've got too much to say, too much to do, and I'm going to just continue on this great path I'm on.
Well, I think the beauty of being a writer is that there is no retirement age.
No.
And in fact, I've seen a lot of writers, yourself included, whose writing seems to gain new dimensions and new richness with each writing experience.
It's true.
The possibility exists that you haven't written your best book yet.
It hasn't, or in my best genre yet, because there is a tremendous amount of fiction within me, and I've been urged by my editors, by my agents, by my dear wife Suzanne, and so many others to begin writing fiction, and that could happen sooner than you think. And also, I think it's important to keep growing in any occupation, whether you're selling shoes or an orthodontist or an author. And you have to expand and try new things. That's why I was so happy to get into first documentary film work and work for PBS and all the networks and doing the interviews and media work, but also, of course, the relationship I formed with Pixar and Disney,
Right.
based on my Route 66 book to create the Cars animated movies. And
Yeah, I think I think those watching the show need to know that you did the voice of which character?
I was the high sheriff of Radiator Springs.
Okay, in the movie Cars.
Don't you forget it, or you're in a heap of trouble.
Okay.
Yes.
But I'm really interested as to how many additional dimensions were open to you and in life that went well beyond the writing, and you've mentioned a few. I think we were talking before we started today's show about an opportunity that's come from China to...
Yes.
Would you tell our audience about that?
Yeah, China has now invited me, and this is going on as we speak. I'll probably be going over there later this summer, and I do a lot of speaking. I do speaking engagements all over, and they want me to talk to the Chinese government and the Chinese people about Route 66, which is arguably the most famous highway in the world, and which I've helped resurrect. It's all out there. That's what Cars was all about. So they found a road, the Chinese, ever resourceful, they call Road 109, and they think that could become their Route 66. So I'm going over there to preach the gospel of the Mother Road to the Chinese people. Yeah.
Route 66, you also told me,
Yeah.
is an interesting study in how businesses along Route 66 realize the absolute need one for the other to create that string of pearls
Exactly.
along that road.
Exactly, and this is another lesson that people can learn, because you know, you and I were also we were talking about that, the analogy to tourism,
Right.
different, like in this great part of the country, getting not only and sometimes it seems insurmountable, but getting the states to work together. If you could get North and South Carolina to work together, that might be too much. But at least if you could get this wonderful string of beautiful communities which have their own unique and unusual resources, but get them to understand that what's good for Asheville is good for Hendersonville, is good for Flat Rock, is good for Brevard.
Yes.
And if you have that whole string again, then you will bring people in, driving traffic on this little linear village, just like a mini Route 66, and they'll want to see it all. They'll want to see Biltmore. They'll want to come here. They'll want to go to the Playhouse. They'll want to attend this wonderful book fest. It just makes so much sense. If only we could get people to do that.
You visited one of our local pearls yesterday at the Carl Sandburg home.
Tremendous.
Do you see a possible book coming out of out of your visit out there? That was your first visit?
That was my first visit to Sandburg's home. I'm very familiar with Sandburg, and I must tell you, I was quite surprised and wonderfully surprised by what I saw. And I'm sure you've heard this before. It is as if the Sandburgs had just left to go down to Dean's Deli to get a sandwich. Because there's the spick and span box, there are his cigar butts in the ashtray, there are the books still with the white paper markers in them marking passages. Everything is there, and as always, the National Park Service has done a tremendous job, and what a great place that is. It's a real gem that you have.
Well, great. I want to ask a little bit about the reviews that your books have drawn.
Mm-hmm.
The preponderance of them to sustain your success have to have been very positive reviews. But I want to ask on the flip side, do you occasionally find a review that you think is not as positive as was warranted? And if you do you learn anything from that as an author?
I'm very pleased to say that throughout my writing career, I have received very, very few what I would call negative reviews. And if I do, and I read them, I learn absolutely nothing from them, because they're usually, and I am biased, dead wrong. I can usually tell even if they've read the book or not, and that's what disturbs me the most about reviews, is sometimes I can tell they haven't even thoroughly read the book. But no, reviews are fine, and I love to. Everybody loves to get some amount of praise, but actually the best review I can get is people buying and enjoying my book. I get great reviews from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, to Texas Monthly, to papers throughout Europe on this book on Crockett. But I love the reaction I get from readers, and I love the fact that it immediately went into 4 printings, hit the New York Times list, and that's the best review of all, is to get that reaction.
And I guess you've run into a few folks here at the book festival that are readers of your
Yes, I
books.
have. They know me from either Route 66 or my Pretty Boy book.
Pretty Boy Floyd.
Pretty Boy Floyd, a young man who started his life south of here in Georgia and ended up as Public Enemy #1, or from one of the other books. And I've been fortunate to do a lot of national media, and I've had several people that they just saw me on the Jon Stewart show and on the Colbert Report, or heard me on Diane Rehm, and her show's tremendous, that book show on NPR.
We're so pleased that you joined us. Again, this is Michael
It's been
Wallace
great.
from
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. You don't even talk funny.
Oh, well, I don't, because I'm a native Missourian. The mother of the state that is the mother of the West. Yes.
Oh, that's right.
It
Yes.
is. Yeah.
As time winds down, what question would you like me to ask that I've failed to ask so far?
Do I think that the St. Louis Cardinals will once again repeat? And the answer is yes, I think they will. I bleed St. Louis Cardinal red. It's one of my passions, and that's a story yet to come. And I'll tell you someday of how 2 of my boyhood heroes, Stan Musial and Kenny Boyer, inspired me personally when I was 11 years old, and one of the reasons I became a writer.
I had a Stan Musial glove, and I can't find it.
Well,
I've traveled through life with it, and now I can't find it all of a sudden in our home. I hope it's still there somewhere. But,
I do too.
But I think you're right. The Cardinals are quite likely
Yes,
going to
they are.
repeat. There's a dull sameness to their outstanding performance every year. And
Yeah.
as a guy who has occasionally followed the Cubs,
Oh, that's right. Chicago does have a team. I forgot
Well,
about that.
not this year, they don't appear to, but most years they have somebody that trails the
I know.
Cardinals by not quite so many games. Well, we sure appreciate your coming.
It's been delightful.
You're going where from here now?
Literally, we're going to be eventually over the next several days returning to Tulsa, and then I've got a big show to do with CBS, and then the opening of Cars Land, the Radiator Village
Yes.
come to life at Disneyland, where the sheriff will greet you at the gate, and then of course China.
Disneyland. No,
It's
not-
out of Disneyland. It's in Anaheim.
Okay.
It's called Cars Land, and it's the whole village of Radiator Springs, 12 acres large, come to life. And at the gate, you will meet a 1949 Mercury who will inquire of you if you know that there's no running, no spitting, no lollygagging, and no tractor tipping.
I have not heard of Cars Land.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
How far along is that project?
It opens in June.
Wow. See,
Yes.
we hear more about Disney World over on
Of
this
course you do, yeah.
half of the country and very little.
But it's appropriate it's out there because it's out near the
Of course.
end of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fresh out of fresh questions.
Well, I've really enjoyed our visit, and I've really enjoyed my stay here.
Yeah, and we should say that we thank our local bed and breakfast operators for providing complimentary housing to authors like Michael Wallace. We couldn't do it without them and
Yes.
without the support of dozens of people that put this event together.
Yeah, it's all been tremendous.
You were saying you enjoyed meeting a lot of the folks and a lot of the visitors to the event today. So
Oh, yeah.
I hope
great
when we
folks.
leave this interview, we can go back out and meet a few more. We've got a couple of hours to go yet.
I look forward to it.
And we'll see you on TV. Thank you.